Hi guys, and welcome to episode 6 of the JLX Friends Benefits podcast with me, your host, as always, Xander Jack. There's only one topic that Jack and I are going to be discussing today, and it's the topic on everyone's minds. The UK gyms are now open. Without further ado, let's get stuck into it. Hey Jack, thank you very much for joining us again for another episode. It's great to have you. So today we're going to be going through a really cool topic. It's really exciting to have this to be able to talk about. But before we go into that, as we usually do, we're going to just discuss a couple of things that we've both been up to or a couple of things we're excited about this week, and we'll dive into the topics from there. So to kick us off, I'm going to go first this week with something that I've been up to that I'm excited about, and then Jack's going to kick us off for the rest of the conversation from there. And that thing for me was an afternoon off, which for most people, they would think, why is an afternoon off exciting? And I think Jack will probably stand by me with this one, but I find it incredibly difficult to have time off, which is in itself not necessarily healthy. I wouldn't say it's not something that I say to brag about. And I said this to one of my clients in a check-in yesterday. I don't say, oh, hey, I've not had an afternoon off in XYZ, because actually, as we spoke about in a Q&A recently, it does have its issues and its problems when it comes to relationships and things like that. And it's certainly something which I think when it comes to having that afternoon off, I look at it and go, oh God, like I'm going to be letting someone down in this time. Like someone's going to desperately need me, and I'm going to be in my budgie smugglers swimming links in the sea. But the truth is, as we spoke about, if you don't have some time to yourself, if you don't have those days with your loved ones, etc., it's very difficult to give 100% of what you have and who you are to the people you're trying to help. And therefore, having those days and those times where you are feeling a bit more yourself, you can relax, have a beer if that's what you want to do, etc. That makes you more you, and then you're able to help people more. So yeah, I'm actually excited and very nervous for that. It's something which I am very much looking forward to because, often I tend to work more than I probably should. But it's usually out of excitement. It's not because I feel like I have to. It's because I'll get a little project in my mind, or I think, oh, I know what I can do with this, and I'll want to change it. Or I'll want to work on something a bit different, which is, fascinating and a great issue to have, if you like. But when it comes to actually relaxing, that's something that I'm not necessarily very good at. So yeah, excited for that, excited to have some time off and put my feet up, so to speak. But how that goes, I think I'll have to update you.
Mm-hmm. There's always something to do, man. Always something to do. What have you got planned for it? What's the afternoon off? Or is it
we're actually heading down to Cornwall, so it will be kind of a night, but the night kind of leads into the weekend anyway. So it will be a kind of, I say afternoon, it'll be mostly a day really, but I'm hoping to squeeze as much of the morning out as possible so we can leave earlier and get to it, and then kind of do a little bit of camping. We thought the camping would be cancelled because of COVID, but turns out it's not. We're good to go, and we want to support the campsite because obviously they'll have suffered a great deal. So we don't want to cancel our booking. We thought, screw it, we'll go and camp, which I may not even come back from yet. Who knows?
It's one of the one things that is open, I think. I was cycling through the New Forest last Saturday and started seeing a lot of people in motorhomes and stuff like that, and a lot of people around I hadn't seen in the last few months. I'm guessing it's just started to all open back up, and yeah, that'd be good fun. I love Cornwall.
Yeah, Cornwall is lush, to be fair. I mean, as we know, like we both grew up on the south coast, so it's been lovely anyway. But Cornwall just is a bit more blue, a little bit more clear. I must admit, I don't like driving through Cornwall when it's busy because people, don't know how to drive, especially when there's like 400 million people going that way. But also because it just adds another layer of like, I have to leave an hour earlier, which is fine. But then it's like you get a few inconsiderate people, or by accident, this isn't inconsiderate if someone's tyre blows out, but, you have that kind of traffic and it just delays that. So hopefully, I mean, we're planning to leave earlier, which is why I said I'm going to try and squeeze that morning down as much as I can so that we can get on the road and hopefully beat any other traffic going that way. But Yeah, it should be lovely. If you hear any stories in the news about tents being on fire due to irresponsible cooking expeditions, that's probably my partner.
Probably you with a
Um,
steak.
yeah, and if I don't reply to your emails on Monday, it's likely because I was in that tent. But yeah, fingers crossed, everything goes all right.
Cool, man. So weekend for me is going to be gym based. I think I
Oh
am
yeah,
raring to go and get back in the gym. That means
absolutely.
you're going to miss the first few days.
Oh no, not this Friday. So when this comes out on Friday, I will still be here, but it'll be next Friday.
Following
So
one,
yeah, so don't you worry. But to be fair, we've been lucky enough to have
you've
pretty
got a
much a
decent
gym at
set
home.
at home. Yeah, yeah. So
So
I'm absolutely raring to get back in and get on like a proper bulk. I remember when we first started the podcast, I was saying about how I was continuing to bulk, and I was for a good amount of that time. And then, like we say to clients, we tend not to take it to the extremes when you're just doing the at-home workouts and
yeah,
using bands and that sort of thing. I didn't have a huge amount of equipment at home, and so when it got to the point of where I was kind of pushing food a bit too far, I felt like it was kind of in vain. Like I wasn't gaining the amount of muscle tissue I'd want to be for eating that amount of food, and it'd probably be best leaving it until I'm back into the gym and I can kind of resensitize myself a little bit, I suppose, with weights and with being back on
yeah.
machines and everything. And so, yeah, I'm going to be diving into that from this weekend, getting big.
Cannot wait. I think the key here is what you don't have is what you're looking forward to. Because I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they said, "Look, don't please think I'm being ungrateful for what I have at home." Because she has a really good setup. To be fair, barbells, dumbbells, etc. She said, "I just want a leg extension. I want to get on a leg extension," and like that's been the same for me. We've got barbells here. And all I can think of is just getting on a pec fly machine or some cables or a leg
Yeah.
extension or a hamstring curl.
Mate, it's the environment as well, though. It's getting out of like your four walls, like especially for us working at home, as a lot of people are at the moment. You know, you work at home, you hang out at home, you work out at home. It's a lot in one place. I'm looking forward to having that separate place that you can go to, and it's going to be a new gym as well because we recently moved. We're going to have to find
Of
somewhere
course.
locally that is, and that's always exciting as well. Finding a new
Yeah.
place.
New stopping ground.
That's it. Yeah, and that
Can intimidate some more people.
leads us into what we want to go through as well, I suppose. Talk about how people can do that return into the gym as smoothly as possible. Hopefully take people through some things that aren't just what everyone else has been saying, the generic stuff of reduce your volume, you know, go easy, kind of ease into it. All of that stuff is important, but I think it's been kind of relayed by everyone and their mothers at this point. So we can get specific on that stuff, but hopefully we'll have some different stuff to share as well, some things that will be interesting. You got anything that first springs to mind for that?
Yeah, I mean, something I haven't seen a lot of yet, and this might just be due to the people I follow or the people I listen to, potentially. But one of the things I haven't necessarily seen a lot of is things like prehab work. So, a lot of people who we train at home have been doing a lot of at-home workouts, of course, a lot of bodyweight stuff. And if we look at the movement patterns that a lot of these people have been doing, they just can't be replicated at home for what they want to do in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important that we realize that we're going to be going into different movement patterns again. And it's important to give the body a chance to actually initiate that and to adapt to it. So, for example, if you've been doing bodyweight squats at home and you are going to go and slap a 100-kilo barbell on your back, there's a high chance, unless you've got really good range of motion, that you're going to squeeze out another 5-10% at the bottom. So, looking after knees, ankles, hips is going to be really important. And this is, a lot of people have been talking about, as you said, adapting volume, adapting exercises, which all has its place 100%. But I haven't seen a lot of why. I've not really seen many people say why that's important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people will see that. And it's like a lot of things people will say on social media or the news. Making a statement without a why or to defend that statement with something is almost a throwaway statement, because it's like, yeah, okay, I'll just not get injured because I'm not likely the person to get injured, whereas I am. So I kind of like, oh, injury, what?
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? So I think it's important for people to appreciate what they have been doing, but also what they're going to be doing.
That's really good. I've not heard anyone talking about prehab sort of stuff so far. And you can liken it to when you first started in the gym or if you know people who recently started before the COVID situation, they'll often complain of things like their wrists aching or their shoulders aching a little bit, knees being a little bit clicky, etc. And they're all things that I can certainly remember back from when I first started in the gym that end up limiting you just because your joints and your structures aren't yet up to what your muscles can do when you start progressing.
Yeah.
And it's really important to be able to go back into the gym and be able to progress based on what your muscles can now do, not on what your joints are limiting you to not be able to do. Not having to get back into the gym and then a week later be having to take half a week off because your wrists are too painful and you can't do any upper work, or your hips are just feeling horrible and you can't do any lower work. I think it's really important to take care of the structures around those muscles and not just focus on purely getting back and smashing the muscles. It's a great point.
Absolutely. The key here, and this I think is where, excuse me, my muscle connection comes in. Quite a big deal for me.
Mm-hmm.
Just to bounce off what you said there, it's important that when you go back to the gym now, you don't just lift more weight because you can't feel the muscle working. In my perspective, I would be trying to squeeze the living daylights out of every muscle I was trying to work in order to make sure that I was stimulating the muscle, not the joint. And you might sit there and think, how the fuck do you stimulate a joint? Well, in a sense, you're right. You can't stimulate a joint. But if the tendons and the ligaments and the things that support that joint are going to be working harder because you aren't getting enough stimulus into the muscle, or you're not dialing into that well enough, that's how you're going to end up with sore wrists, sore elbows, sore hips.
Yeah.
And as you rightly said, who the hell wants to go back to the gym for the first week and then go, I'm out, I need another week off? I think that would be the most demoralizing thing to have happen. And it would be a bit like standing at the bottom step of your stairs and going, do you know what? I'm just going to jump to step 5 because it could be fun, right? And then you end up toppling back down the stairs because you tried it too quickly. Whereas you could just go, I'm going to take an ego drop for week 1, and then I'm just going to periodize up from there.
Mm-hmm. That little step analogy as well leads really nicely into something I've been thinking about, which is how at this point you can gain more from less. Like going back into it, you can get as good gains as you used to get, or possibly even more from less volume. And then over time, you can start to nudge that volume ceiling upwards as you progress and continue to progress at a really good rate, rather than, with the analogy you gave, jumping up to step 5 and that, you're skipping 1, 2, 3, 4 in that case, all of which you could have got solid progress out of. So don't make the mistake of thinking that you have to go back to doing a similar plan to what you were previously doing to get those same results. When you'd been lifting for, say, a few months or even a few years, there's going to be a certain level of volume and intensity that's required just to keep building muscle or even to maintain. But going back to it now, you're just going to be able to squeeze out so much more from so much less. And even though that might seem almost like you're taking a step back in your head, or like you're not doing what you're fully capable of, it is what you're capable of for this time and for your current state. And then you're going to be able to push that up forwards and get back to where you were eventually. But don't try and skip all those first few steps.
I'm really, really happy that you've said that, because I had a conversation of exactly this yesterday. And there are 2 ways you can view this. There is the way that you can view it of, I've got to take a step back. I'm not doing as much volume as I was doing. I feel weaker. I'm not doing as many exercises a session. Or you can look at it as you are now a beginner with ace form. So when you step back into the gym, imagine the first time you ever stepped into the gym, you had great form, because realistically, most people, who are probably going to be listening to this podcast have good form. They're interested in improving, of course, but generally speaking, most people have good form. And what you have now is an opportunity to build from a place where your workout doesn't have to take an hour and a half or 2 hours anymore. And the analogy I gave to somebody yesterday was, when you're dieting, say you start at 3,000 calories, okay? You could go, do you know what, I'm going to take 1,000 calories off and I'm going to go down to 2,000 calories. You would lose weight. Yes, you would. 100%. But what do you miss out in between those stages? you miss out on probably 3 for some people, maybe 4 at a push jumps in calorie decreases that could A, last you a lot longer period of time, and B, make the process a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, the same thing happens with the gym here. You could go, well, I'm going to suffer for the first 2 weeks with crippling DOMs, and I'm just going to go balls to the wall, same workout I did last time, and I'm just going to try and adapt as well as I can. Or you can go, well, let's look at what the gym is saying. The gym is saying I've probably got an hour slot, which I believe is mostly what's happening at the moment, especially here in the UK. I've got an hour slot. I have to wipe everything down really, really well before I can move on to anything else. Well, to me, I would be thinking, what can I do in the same place that will give me the biggest bang for my buck without having to clean 7 different machines? Well, what I would do is say, I'm going to do 10, I'll do 10 reps of back squats. I'm going to do 3 sets. But instead of doing them to the extent where I've got like 30 seconds to a minute in between each set, where in theory, I do my first set is maybe 10 reps. My second set is 10 reps. My third rep set goes down to maybe 8 reps, just because I'm tired from the short rest periods. I'd be going, I'm going to have 2 to 3 minutes rest in between these sets, and I am going to thump it. Because maybe not in week 1, as we're going to discuss a bit later with, edging your way back into the gym. But in terms of volume, you want to get the most out of every set and every rep that you're doing. And you have to ask yourself, am I getting the most out of this if by the time I've done 10 reps, I probably could have done 15 more at this weight? And or if I had a little bit more rest time, could I have done a bit more? And I guess in a sense, I've almost contradicted myself by saying you've only got an hour, take 3 minutes break. But if you think about the stimulus that you're going to be getting from doing those 3 sets of 10 at, 90% of your 10 RM, for example, you're going to be getting a lot more bang for your buck. And in reality, that means you won't then have to go onto the leg press afterwards and then the leg extension and then do some lunges just to get a bit of a burn in your quads, because you already have been pretty well cooked from that first set. Would you agree with that, or are you on a bit of a different camp with that one?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to say that, but I do see how that follows in terms of logic, because those 3 sets of 10 are probably still going to give you some pretty nasty soreness the next day if you do spank them properly, and it's going to be a good stimulus for your legs. And, if you are taking a bit more rest in between, you could then just move on to, maybe doing some contrast supersets or something. If you didn't just want to be there for, take some dumbbells over to your area and be doing some shoulder presses or something that's not going to impact your quad performance, on that next set, still allows you to get a good amount of work in that time. But also importantly, something I'd underscore with that is not just putting in junk volume, which I think is a really good term. I can't remember who I first heard junk volume from, but I think it really helps to kind of underscore the fact that some exercises you do, you're just kind of pissing about with them. Like you're already done with a full leg day and you just want to like burn out at the end or something. You just end up smashing loads of leg extensions just kind of for the sake of it to get a big pump or something, whatever it is. And that's not to say leg extensions are junk volume. It's just in a certain context. I think when you're very advanced, you can get used to wanting to chase like a certain feeling at the end of a workout instead of really focusing on like the overarching kind of bigger picture. And so as you're going back to it, really making sure that you're not just chucking in extra sets and extra exercises because you feel like that's what you would have used to have done. And instead, like you've said, really focusing on the big stuff, focusing on the compounds, getting proficient with that stuff first, and giving your all to those things. And if you do really give your all to those exercises, you can get away with a lot less sets and a lot less total volume compared to what you would have used to have to do.
Absolutely. I saw a really good description of junk volume, and I cannot remember where. So if somebody knows where this is, then I have stolen it, but I can't remember where from. And the description was junk volume is effectively any volume you add to the end of your workout, which doesn't give you a great stimulus to the muscle, but adds a great deal of fatigue.
Yeah.
And a really good example of that, which I see so often, and it pains me, is where I'll see people do their squats, and they'll do maybe good mornings, some glute bridges or hip thrusts, some abductions. And then they'll go and do 20 minutes of LBT or something, legs, bums and tums. And I think to myself, how on earth are you managing to do that after all of that? I can't fathom how those two things add up to myself. I'm all for a good, burnout afterwards. But to me, that just says you've not worked hard enough in that session.
It's going to be one of two things, though, isn't it? You either haven't pushed that first session enough, as in you could have had a lot more out of those, meaningful exercises, or that you're gonna, if you do really smash it, you're then going to go and give that burnout session or that class or whatever a real half-assed effort. In which case, why are you doing it?
Yeah,
like why not?
We had a really good chat about this once, ages and ages and ages ago. About classes, actually. And I remember what you said to me. It was to do with someone, I think, who we were discussing was doing like 9 classes a week, not seeing any progress. And we were chatting about it over WhatsApp audios. And I remember you saying to me that just because somebody does something for an hour doesn't mean the intensity that they have done it for that hour is matched to what the description of the class is. And that really stuck with me because it's so true. You could do some kind of SAS-based fitness class, but just because you've done it doesn't mean you've actually done it. Doesn't mean you've actually put in everything you could have done. And that is what junk volume is. It's going through the motions with something because you feel like you either have to or you want to. But take this for an example. I trained legs before we started doing this today. And I deloaded last week, so I am back on plan this week. And the session I did was 3 sets of 12 front squats, 3 sets of 10 for deficit kettlebell straight leg deadlifts. Then I did some kettlebell leg extensions, which I managed to fix up with. It's a long story. And then some banded hamstring curls. And then I just finished off with a bit of abduction work with the band. And I tell you what, I came out of the gym literally wobbling at the legs. And it wasn't necessarily because I did loads of volume. I did 3 sets for each. So if you look at how that racks up, that's 6 sets of quads, 6 sets of hamstrings. And I don't know, if you count half sets for some of the glute work I did, maybe 5 sets of glutes. And you could say, well, hang on a minute. If I look at my session, I got 20 sets of glutes in here. But I can guarantee you that if you hit those front 6, like that was the only 6 you were doing, you wouldn't actually need to do the other 14. And if you did do the other 14, the chances are that you would be going half-assed at it. Or I would argue that, and this is true of me, I don't know whether this says that I'm weak or whatever, but I would look at that and go, right, I've got 20 sets to do. I'll get through this stuff first, whatever I can do to save some energy to be able to do that. And that completely defines the object, doesn't it? You want to be not saving energy. You want to be going for it. But because it says like 20 sets of glutes, I'd be thinking, well, if I'm going to get to that point and still be able to walk, then this stuff's going to have to take an RIR drop to be even thinking about getting to that point.
Yeah, for sure. And talking of compounds as well and bigger exercises and the exercises that we tend to put towards the start of a workout, I think it's also important to acknowledge, which again, I haven't seen people talking about, is that the first few sessions, especially for big movements, may feel like shit. And not because of like people saying, oh, it's going to be difficult or you have to reduce the weight or whatever. All of that's true. But I'm talking purely from like a neurological standpoint. And all we're talking about when we say neurological is there's a separate arm of strength. You have your muscles and your muscles' ability to exert force, but then you also have neurological adaptations, which is to do with the brain, which is to do with the spinal cord, which is to do with firing of neurons. And that sort of stuff drops off really quickly when you stop doing certain exercises. Within a couple of weeks, you start to lose that neurological strength. So if you haven't squatted for months, if you haven't deadlifted for months, if you haven't done certain other barbell movements or whatever, they're just going to feel weird in some circumstances. And this isn't like condemning you to have a terrible session. You might go in and feel fine and you just enjoy it enough to where you're happy and it's all good. But if things just feel a bit weird and they feel a bit off, expect that and know that because they're also lost quickly, they also come back quickly. And so within a couple of weeks, once again, a couple of sessions, your squats will be feeling more fluid, especially if, like we said at the start, you're doing your prehab work and you're taking care of the joints around it. Your deadlifts will start to feel good. The movements will just start to feel more fluid and you'll feel more competent. So as long as you are focusing on that form and you are adjusting your weights accordingly to what you can do now, not what could you previously do, as long as you're taking care of that stuff, the neurological adaptations will come back. But don't feel like you're a loser and all hope is lost if things just feel like Bambi on ice when you've got a barbell on your back.
It'll be interesting to see people's perspectives on this next week. If we look at social media, if we look at emails from clients and so on, because you're completely right. It's just not viable for the body to maintain these pathways. It's pointless. It's a bit like us leaving a room and just going, screw it, I'll leave the TV on. We're not using it, but we'll leave it on. It just doesn't make sense. Why would you do that? It's a waste of energy. So the body does the same thing. It literally just goes, all right, well, if you're not going to use this pathway for a minute, we'll turn it off. We'll turn it down.
Yeah.
And so all you have to do is give it a reason to fire back up again. And the reason I said it will be interesting to see what happens on social media next week is because I believe there'll be two groups of people. There'll be a group of people who say, hey, it's okay. Like, we're all got weaker. Don't worry. It's fine. We'll all be back there soon. There'll be a group of people as well who are very kind of on the other side of that, which are quite negative. Like, I had a terrible session today. Like, I'm disappointed. The gym isn't what I thought it was going to be when it opened back up. And to me, this says that your expectations of going back to the gym were slightly out of kilter. And so if we take into consideration what you've just said, Jack, and that is that you don't have to have a bad session, but your mindset going into that session will greatly determine the emotional outcome of it. For example, if you go into this session going, I'm probably going to move a bit like shit, but it's only going to feel worse if I try and hit a PR or I try and lift the same weight I did last time. And if you take on board a few of the things we've already spoken about, such as doing a bit of prehab, mind muscle connection, that things won't move as well as they will, my immediate reaction would be, how do I win at this session? What can I do that makes me win? And to me, if I was going into the gym and loads of people are looking forward to getting under a barbell, I would be saying, what I'm going to do is I'm going to squat with an empty barbell for maybe 3 sets, and I'm just going to move. I'm going to see what hurts. I'm going to do some mobilizations in between each one. I'm going to see how I feel. And then I'm going to start just creeping up. I'm going to start feeling how get the core engaged, get the glutes working, get the quads working. And you might only squat 50, 40% of what you're used to. But if that feels good and you feel confident, I can guarantee you're going to be in a much better mental state than if you go, YOLO, do 1 set of barbell warm up and then crack on to 80%, because that will feel pretty bad. And then you'll be like, I've lost all my strength. This is terrible.
Yeah. You're probably also going to drive yourself into the floor for your next session, which if you're now getting back into it and starting to, like we said at the start, ramp things up and actually squeeze the most juice you can out of every level, you have to make sure that you're not then crippling yourself for the next leg session 3 or 4 days later. You've got to make sure that you are doing what you can also recover from, not just what's the max you can achieve in that session, because everything's shiny again and new and exciting.
It's all about incremental, isn't it? It's all about looking at the bigger picture.
So what would that, I think one thing as well that a lot of people have said is talking about things like go easy on yourself, etc. But people haven't really been quantifying that. So say, for example, a client came to you and said, I want to go in and do my first leg session. I know what we have kind of briefly on the plan, but what would that leg session look like for you? Like, how would you kind of break it down?
I would look at what they've done. So you've obviously got to take into consideration what this person has done at home for the last few weeks. Yeah. Because if they've got a barbell or some dumbbells and the plan you've written them is touch and go, close to gym, but not too far, like mechanically speaking. So maybe they've done some good mornings, maybe they've done some RDLs, we're looking at hip hinge, knee flexion, etc. If we've got all of that in, then when it comes back to the gym plan, there's a likelihood that we don't have to hold back too much with it. So
let's say someone hasn't, though, because I think most people have been doing body weight bands, grabbing what weights they can.
So what I would do then is I would look at movement patterns first. So I wouldn't probably go something like back squat, good morning, sumo deadlift, because mechanically speaking, your lower back won't have had a great deal of activation recently. Your glutes won't be working in a hip hinge fashion very well. Not forever, but as we spoke about, you won't have done anything that means hip hinge at home is necessarily going to be that optimal. I mean, I've given some people some kind of sofa-based glute back extensions, but other than that, it's quite difficult if you don't have any weights to do much weighted hip extension. But what I would be saying is, what can we do in each session that is mechanically a little bit different? So if I had 3 leg sessions, the first one, I would probably go big with a back squat. I would be saying, stick around a low percentage. I would probably go a larger rep range of like 8 to 12 to give them the freedom of, it doesn't really matter where you land in this. Don't be pressured to try and get to 10 if you're at 6 and you're like, shit, this is heavy. Just stop, and I would be going at 2 sets for that. Then my second exercise would be something which isn't so heavy necessarily on the lower back. So I might look at something like a dumbbell RDL. So something which is a lot more stimulus and a lot less fatigue than say a barbell RDL, which is obviously going to hammer the erectors, lower back, hip extension more so. In fact, you could take that one step further and even go contralateral bench supported RDL or unilateral bench supported RDL, where you take.
I was just thinking that, and then I thought there's a playoff with that I think is worth talking about. That if people think I want to unload a little bit and maybe do bench supported or single leg or something, on one hand, yeah, you get to use less weight, but it may also feel worse because of the lack of stability. You're going another layer of complexity there. Yeah. And I don't think we can really say what's better or worse for each person. But if you go in and you want to do some sort of straight leg hip hinge variation, just know that you've got those 2 things to kind of weigh up. If you're going kind of single leg or something, you're going to be able to unload the joints a little bit more or maybe focus more on mind to muscle connection. But it may feel worse just from that neurological adaptation standpoint again. So maybe play around with each of those things and see what feels good for you in that first session.
Outside of athletic populations as well, and again, a conversation that I know we've had before in great detail is why people trade off strength or weight in the exercise for balance in a physique-based fashion. It just isn't appropriate. So if somebody said, hey, I actually want to work on my balance, I'm a bit clumsy, then hey, yeah, let's go. Let's do some Bulgarian split squats, non-supported, dumbbells in each hand, or we can do some single leg contralateral RDLs with no support. But otherwise, I'm kind of thinking to myself, you're selling yourself short by not supporting. Mm-hmm. And for some people, I know that I've had clients in the past in person who've said, I don't want to hold on to something that make me look weak. And I'm like, it could do. But if you're doing single leg RDLs with a 30 kilo dumbbell, I don't think anybody's going to come over and be like, oh, you're weak. Mm-hmm. But if we look at simple mechanics and balance, if you look at a crane, they've all got those huge weights that sit behind them. That's not just for show. That's because the other end is going to be weighing a great deal. And it comes to a point where you've got to think, well, mechanically, this is going to be very, very difficult to balance if I don't have either A, something to support my left or right hand, or B, you want to strap a weight to your foot. And I know which one I'd be going with. But yeah, certainly that trade-off has to be a consideration. And to me, it would have to weigh up as well what the person was like. So if they were someone who is very advanced, then I probably wouldn't mind going single leg because they can probably pick up that balance again real quick. But if it was someone who wasn't so well balanced or maybe more of a beginner, then I'd certainly be going down the double leg kind of work as opposed to the single leg work.
So far we've got starting off with some sort of compound, something like a squat variation or something, and that is more in the fashion of getting them back into that movement, feeling good with it again, maybe trying to push sets on if they can with the weight that they're able to, but not looking to do anywhere near high volume, keeping it 2 or 3 sets or so. Then moving into something that takes off some stress from the lower back, reduces that axial loading. So maybe something hamstring based as the example that we've given there. Then where would you go from that point? Would you stick on still with legs, or would you be doing some maybe full body type sessions early on?
That's an interesting conversation in itself. The problem with full body sessions is I personally am a big fan of full body sessions. I think they're great for the right person. The problem is if you have, from my experience, someone who really throws the kitchen sink at stuff, they can actually be far more fatiguing than normal full leg session, simply because, I mean, Jack, if we train together, we've done legs together before, right? And we did some squats, and then we moved on to, I think, some good mornings. Then we did some kind of isolation leg extensions, hamstring curls, etc. If, however, we'd have done back squat, bench press, good morning, some kind of row, each of those exercises is fairly fresh. So in a sense, we'll be taking exercises that on their own separate days would be the most fatiguing exercise, throwing them all into a session, and we'd have been absolutely bent over, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be really responsible, in my opinion, with how you program a full body day, in the sense that I would be going 1 or 2 compounds like I would normally. Then I'd be going, right, okay, well, I'm going to name this lower body focused day. Then what I'm going to do is give you some upper body accessories. So it might be like delts and arms and abs.
Exactly.
Then the next day it would be like... Say again?
I said exactly, which we like to do. Like if we kind of sprinkle that sort of stuff in with clients, it will be maybe if they want to have a bit of a focus on arms, say, in their upper body, but their main focus is their lower body, then maybe you sprinkle in some contrast supersets or something and put some curls in there or some extensions, or, something that's relatively low fatigue and something that's just going to help get them extra stimulus and extra frequency in the week. But I'm glad you said that. I think I'm with you. I don't think going back to the gym and going straight into a full body plan is a great idea, which may seem counterintuitive because that, again, might be something that people are saying online. Don't just go in and focus on 1 or 2 body parts, go and do a general all body circuit and stuff. But you have to bear in mind that your entire body is desensitized at this point. And if you go in and work every single muscle with compounds, like Xander was saying, you're probably actually just going to ramp up fatigue times 5 compared to what you would if you just focused on a quality lower body session. And you're going to absolutely cripple yourself in terms of walking and functioning the next day.
The other point to make with that, I actually started off a lot of my clients when they were at home with full body work, purely because with the things that they had, with the multitude of reps, I found it more efficient to create supersets like that.
And that makes sense because stimulus is much lower as well. They're still sensitized because they've been doing gym work. And if anything, they're dropping down to body weight and bands and stuff. So, yeah.
And then what I did is kind of halfway, I transitioned quite a few of them back, because what they were then used to was... maybe Monday and Tuesday combined was 6 sets of legs. So 6 sets of quads, hamstrings, glutes, whatever have you. And then say Wednesday was predominantly upper, and then maybe 6 to 10 sets for the back half of the week. What I was then doing was saying on Monday, you're going to do 10 sets. Tuesday, you're going to do 10 sets, and Friday, you're going to do 10 sets. So each muscle group was then getting hammered with more intensity on the same day, which then gave them an extra boost in stimulus for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that really worked because a lot of people started missing the kind of pump they were getting. Because obviously novelty is a big thing, but they were starting to get that back again. But the main reason I actually did that was because I never intended on sending them back to the gym with a full body plan.
Yeah.
There are some clients I have now who be listening to this thinking, you fucking forgot about me. I've still got a full body plan. But don't worry, there's perfect reason for that. And that tends to be where I've seen people really flourish with it. And I've gone, do you know what? Like, this isn't broken. I'm not gonna fix it, because you're clearly enjoying this method of training. It suits your lifestyle. it suits, the equipment you have at it. Let's not change. Let's carry on.
There's nuances to every single situation for sure.
100%. And so in my little gym session, I think what I would do instead of going full body is I would then go to something which was more anterior-posterior, so hip thrusty method. But I wouldn't throw an actual barbell hip thrust on the end of that, because I mentioned I would be quite wary of the lower back. And if people's legs are already tired, obviously you still have knee extension in a hip thrust. So we don't want to then have this issue where the knees are like, hey, what are you doing? I would probably go along the lines of something either unilateral, because it's lighter. But then you also have the consideration of, is the lower back working harder potentially then? But what I probably would do is go heavy abduction or something like a cable pull through, where we have still got that, a lot of glute activation, but less so in terms of lower back. And then I would probably just do a little bit of lighter abduction work, maybe to finish off, and a little bit of calf work if that's something they wanted to do.
Yeah. And again, keeping the volume pretty low throughout those.
Yeah.
You've been around the 2 to 3 set sort of range, especially if you're doing working sets. And generally, if you're going to be going into accessory work, machine work, that stuff is going to come back to you a lot quicker. You're going to be able to push a leg extension, for example, rather than, as we said earlier, something like a back squat may just feel a bit dodgy, and you may be limited by what you can feel and what you can achieve in that sense. Whereas the leg extension, you'll be able to just fix yourself in position and crank them out. So be careful with that. And if you really are doing some like top end sets, keep it to 1, 2, maybe 3s, even pushing it as a top end set. Maybe you have 1 or 2 kind of warm ups when you get into it, and you get that joint warmed up and you feel that muscle working. If you are going to be pushing, high RIRs or even to failure, then I think that's where you want to be, 1 or 2 sets of those only, and leaving the rest in the tank for the next session to continue progressing that.
So we've done lower body. What would you do upper body? So if you had to plan an upper body session, let's say we are shoulder dominant, back is second, and chest is little to none. What would you be thinking of there?
I'd be splitting it probably more in terms of like full upper, rather than having like, shoulders and chest one day, arms and back another day or something. Because for upper, I think you're generally going to, I guess we're talking, if we're saying with this sort of split, we're probably mainly talking like a female dominant sort of upper session, not having too much chest in there, not having too much direct arm work and stuff. And in that case, I think you can get away with doing full upper quite well. If you're not working a lot of like heavy pressing movements, or if you're not doing a lot of like really back thickness focused heavy rows, heavy deadlifts and stuff, then I think you can go with more full upper comfortably. I think it's going to look like having some sort of maybe contrast superset, or at least contrast exercise work. So just making sure that you're essentially rotating through those muscles. If you're doing some sort of shoulder exercise, then giving those shoulders a break and going on to something that's maybe bicep based or a little bit of back or something. Then maybe moving on to something that's more tricep or push based, and kind of cycling through those different types of movements for the upper body, all the while being wary of not overloading one joint too much. So not doing too much work that's going to put a lot of stress on your shoulders or your rotator cuffs, for example, or not doing something that's really just going to smash your elbows. And that also comes into exercise selection as well. Not getting too fancy with different variations and different things that you may think you want to dive back into. And like we said, for lower body as well, focusing on getting your bread and butter on those first few compounds and making sure that you are working those muscles with the first couple of principal exercises. And then you can move to a little bit of accessory work after, if anything, just to take the load off, like we said, from those specific muscles or specific joints.
Interesting question. Do we think that potentially, so we know that pre-exhaust method is potentially not dangerous, potentially damaging towards hypertrophy goals, right? Because we can't get as much stimulus to the muscle, etc., in the compounds that would be most effective.
Yeah, I think we should define that quickly or explain that quickly, because a lot of people don't actually know this. People talk about pre-exhausting a muscle, and it's like quite a common bodybuilding technique. Go and do leg extensions before you squat, for example, and people think that's going to make your quads more tired out and get worked harder. What scientific studies actually find is that if you pre-exhaust a muscle, you then use less of that muscle when you go to do a compound. So if, for example, you were going to squat, you end up using more glutes, more hips, maybe a bit more hamstrings at certain points of it, instead of the quads, because those quads are already fatigued. So even though it seems like something that's going to build muscle, it is actually potentially damaging, like Xander said, for building muscle.
Precisely. Thank you. So with that in mind, is there a potential, and this is just come off the top of my head, is there a potential that doing some form of not actually pre-exhaust, so the definition is completely right, but not doing that, but potentially doing some form of isolation exercises pre-compounds, do you think that that might be effective in increasing blood flow for the first couple of weeks, or would we still stick with the don't do it?
Well, purely looking for the benefit of increasing blood flow.
Yeah, and obviously stimulation of the muscles that maybe people haven't used so much of lately. So my actual thought process was, would it be beneficial to do some glute ham raises off not off a GHR, but literally like a back extension, to fire up the hamstrings and the glutes before I went and did, say, some heavy hip thrusts, just to engage those muscles first, as opposed to going straight for a hip thrust. As I said, this came straight off the top of my head, and I'm wondering if it's a good idea or not, but
I think you could then run into an issue that you earlier identified, which is if you were going into something like a hip thrust after doing something that was knee dominant, you then may get like caving in at the knees, you may get other fatigue coming in from other muscles. And the idea of being able to work those muscles optimally may be even more difficult. I think you could probably get the same effect of what you're getting at there from the sort of thing you were talking about before, like prehab work. Like, for example, doing some activation type work, making sure that you warm up well. Something that we're a big fan of is just like acclimating into your warm up. So, I won't just go and load up a heavy barbell and start doing barbell RDLs, for example. I think that's a quick way to snap a hamstring and feel like shit while you're doing it as well. I would go in and do a really light hamstring curl initially to get those hamstrings warmed up. And note, this isn't pre-exhausting. These are very different things. Just warming something up means that you're getting some blood flow in that area. You're getting the mind-muscle connection, but you're stopping well shy of failure. We're talking 5 reps plus away from failure, and you're not letting yourself actually pre-fatigue before you go into that. And, maybe then you do 2 more sets, ramping up the weight, but bringing those reps down as you do on the hamstring curl. So you're still staying well away from failure. And then you go and do a couple of sets to warm up again on the RDL, similar sort of setup. And then once you get into it, you should be feeling loose. You should be feeling good in your hamstrings. There should be a good amount of blood flow in there. And then you can dive in without having any pre-fatigue kind of impacting you from other areas as well.
Yeah, exactly. And you're totally right. As I said, it was just something I kind of thought about then. I thought, is that something that would work? And I kind of spoke out, I was thinking out loud, but 100%. And the key for me and for anyone who's listening between the two terms, it is very simple. Warm up, pre-exhaust, right? So exhaust is the key there. We're not looking to exhaust anything in a warm-up, because if you are, that's not a warm-up. The literal idea of a warm-up is to increase blood flow, to increase your ability to perform things. But if you're exhausted, that is not increasing that ability to perform. So the key, I would always say, is exhaust is not something you want to be doing straight away in the gym.
Yeah.
Looking then at how we would encourage people back. So one of the biggest things I've seen at the moment is people kind of saying, I'm not going to go back to the gym yet. I don't think it's a good idea, which I'm not saying it is a good idea. But I'm saying, what if we were to play kind of devil's advocate to this and go, well, it is a good idea. What kind of positives can we both think of that would be very beneficial to be going back into the gym at the moment?
I think from a you have to address the elephant in the room and acknowledge the virus.
Mm-hmm.
I think from what it looks like, things are going to be like, as long as your gym is following protocol and people in that gym are following protocol, the gym's going to be cleaner than it's ever been. You're probably going to be less likely to pick something up in the gym now than you ever were before. It's not uncommon for people to pick up colds and flus and stuff from the gym, and that'd be quite a regular thing. I mean, everything's going to be cleaned 100 times more than it would have previously been in a day. So I think the worries directly about the virus are they're understandable. It's definitely understandable to have that anxiety around it, but you have to take it on a case-by-case basis and say that if you are young, healthy, and again, following that protocol and everyone in that gym is, the actual risk to you is extremely low. If you're someone who is a high at-risk population, then I definitely think that's a consideration to wait till further down the line, and I understand that. But I think from a pure cleanliness perspective, I personally don't think there's going to be much to worry about. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the gym that I use and work at, they have been, so far, from what I can tell, really quite diligent in how they're going about it. And the thing is, the gyms have so much to lose here. They have everything to lose. They're probably the last thing to open up aside from things like rugby clubs. And so they actually have a lot to lose here. So they should, one would think, be really, really on it with, like you said, Jack, the cleaning, the monitoring of numbers in the gym and all of that stuff. I think without kind of going around and giving everyone a slap on the wrist about this, it fundamentally as well comes down to us as individuals. We talk a lot about responsibility, the ability that we have to respond to situations. Not only that, but the ability to control our own actions. That's one of the beauties of being a human being, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we go to the gym, it's about being courteous, wipe all your stuff down, do everything that you would expect someone else to do for you, but also don't be irate with people who don't, because fundamentally that's going to be ruining your experience. If you're concerned about that kind of thing, I would just wipe stuff down before you use it. And I'm sure that's probably going to be one of the things that gyms say, wipe it down before you use it, wipe it down after you use it, and go along. And for me, one of the things that I would consider with going back to the gym is that the first couple of weeks are probably going to be a bit of a trial and error. So, if there are times where you can go to the gym, if you're working from home at the moment and your boss is pretty cool, don't wait till 5 o'clock to go when everyone who's actually back at work physically won't necessarily have the option to do that. Choose a better time, go early in the morning, go in the middle of the morning when other people are at work, or go in the middle of the afternoon. And you might say, well, hang on a minute, I don't have that luxury. Well, that's fine, because what we're saying is, if you are someone like you or I who has that luxury, and I can almost guarantee that if we go back to the gym, it's going to be very early in the morning, then try and be clever with when you go. Don't just be that person who's like, I go to the gym at 5:30 every day. That's cool. But maybe if you have flexibility with your boss, with your working hours, consider, most gyms, I know Pure Gym, I'm 99% sure Pure Gym have an app which you can check out to see. I'm sure if you're at home listening to this, you're either nodding or you're going, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But you can see kind of the frequency of people going into the gym.
Yeah, they have that. Yeah,
they do. Sweet.
Live numbers of how many people are in.
Check that out. If you're not sure if you want to go or not, sit on your phone, do a little bit of data collection, see when the easiest times of the day to go are. If you can make that time of day, go for it, because that is going to ease a lot of the stress of the situation, which I think will make this process a lot easier, a lot more enjoyable as well.
Yeah. And bear in mind that going back into the gym, don't think that you also have to be really rigid necessarily with the plan that you do have. You just going back into the gym and having access to weights again and all of these machines is going to be fantastically beneficial for your physique and for the stimulus that you're giving your muscles. And so don't go into the gym and then fret when you can't get onto a certain machine. And like Xander said, potentially ruin your experience because of that. Understand that there's going to be a lot of different options and there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat. And especially when you're getting back in the gym and you can, you like that one, especially when you're getting back in the gym and you can stimulate your muscles in all these new ways. There is no reason to get het up about the fact that you can't get on a leg press. move on, find another variation. It'll be great for your muscles regardless, and crack on. Stay fluid with what you've got. Like Xander said, keep up that kind of one-to-one responsibility with it. I think that is a really important thing to underscore, because it only starts to get broken when people lead by example. If everyone who goes into the gym on that normal 6 a.m. session stops and chats to each other and shakes hands still and, hangs out and is not keeping their distance, then everyone's going to see that and that's going to continue on. Whereas if you set that standard early and, if someone goes to offer you their hand to shake their hand because you haven't seen them in a few months, you say, hey, we can't do that. Or you step back from someone when they get too close and say, hey, can we just make sure we keep our distance? Everyone's going to understand that, and it's only going to keep up that ongoing respect and that ongoing following of protocol in order to keep you safe, rather than just kind of slipping back into old habits and then things potentially becoming dangerous.
Yeah, to go back to what you said about machines and not getting stuff, full transparency here. All my UK clients will know this because I've told them. But what I've said to a lot of people is, go and enjoy yourself this week. I'm not going to write you a plan. Just go in, see what you can actually do. Because the full transparency here is that a lot of the American clients I have, I wrote out all their plans. I was like, wicked, we're back in the gym. This is what we're going to do. And 90% of them got sent back to me because they went in for a week. We're like, right, we can't do supersets. They've moved this machine, and this machine out of the way. So they're no longer in the same vicinity. They've taken this out. I can't do that anymore. I have to stay in this area. And I was like, whoa, okay. So what I learned immediately was that actually every gym is different. Everyone's approach to the gym is different. So what I've kind of said is, go and do some recon. Go find out. Go see what you can do. If you have full realm of the gym like you had before, wicked. Then we'll crack on as we were, and we can get that sorted out. But the one thing you don't want to do, and again, coming back to kind of keeping ourselves mentally happy and winning, is set yourself up to fail by going, this is my plan. I am going to do every exercise on here, whether the gym will allow me to or not. And you get in there, they're like, you can't do supersets. You can't carry dumbbells over to the machines. You can only use one barbell at a time. You can't use a barbell and dumbbells. And you're like, but my plan says this is what I have to do. And they're like, sorry, you can't do that. That is an easy fail. Whereas if you go in, all of the guys and girls have plans already, so they know roughly what they're doing. They know what they can do, what they should do. And it's about going in there and have some damn fun. The gym is a playground at the end of the day. It is a playground if you choose to see it as such. Some people see it as torture, but, depends who's coaching you, I guess. But the idea is that you go in there as relaxed as you can be, and you don't want to be going in there and being like, I can do this, I can't do that, because you're already going to be stressed. I think there's going to be an underlying subconscious anxiety amongst a lot of people of, what can I do? Is this clean? Is this not clean? Mm-hmm. So set yourself up to win. Go in with the open mind of, I'm back in the playground. Let's do some shit I like doing. Let's throw some weight around after you've done your prehab. And let's get on some machines I've not used for a while. And I couldn't encourage you to do that more. I said this to a lot of my clients, but I want some happy ass emails coming my way next week. I want some happy DMs. I want people saying, yeah, I lifted 50 kilos lighter, but I had a great time. That's what matters to me, fundamentally.
I like that. Yeah, I like that a lot. I'm aware time's pushing on, but shall we touch on food as well?
Yes, let's have a quick one on food. Yeah, I agree.
Because again, something that I think people aren't talking about is the food side of things rather than just the training. I think just the blanket kind of ease into it thing doesn't leave anything, or doesn't give any detail in terms of what people are going to do for nutrition. And I sit in the camp of this, of where we've been talking about, you're going to do things that are novel. You're going to experience a lot of muscle damage. You're going to have to be careful to not overdo things. And therefore, in order to support that best, you have to be recovering. And a huge part of that is food. And so if you've let your calories get quite low, either because you've been dieting or for whatever reason over the COVID period, then as you're getting back into the gym, I'd really recommend making sure that you're keeping protein high. You're even maybe upping calories to make sure that you're recovering and taking care of that muscle damage. And you're not basically capping yourself at the knees and having another thing that is going to make you sore before that next session. Because if you are going in and stimulating your body in all these new types of ways, there's just going to be a lot of micro tears, a lot of muscle damage, and a lot of things that you're going to need protein, carbs, and fats to go in and repair.
I couldn't agree with that anymore. And I have spoke to a couple of my clients already about this. I've actually put a couple of them on diet breaks for next week. So just kind of said, look, this is your calorie roof. Do what you want. Eat what you want. We've obviously been really transparent with that since ever. We're not people who say, don't eat this, don't eat that. As a proxy, sometimes food does end up getting a lot narrower when the calories drop, just because you obviously want hunger to be at a minimum. But, I've said, I would prioritize carbohydrate and protein as always, because they're better for recovery. But equally, this week, I don't mind giving you an extra 200 calories if there's someone who's just below maintenance, maybe. Because what's likely going to happen is the effort that they put into the gym session, with the excitement that you're going to have, with the effort they're going to be putting in, is going to be a lot bigger than they're going to have at home. One, because it's more exciting, and two, because they're going to have more weight and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But two, the recovery aspect. And as you so rightly said, that is the one thing people have really not, in my opinion, considered. It's recovery. The reason that we say do a bit less, yes, is for injury prevention, but y'all want to go and train again, right? It's not Saturday's going to be the big day, and I'm going to go next Saturday as well. It's Saturday's a big day. I'm going to go on Monday. I might go on Wednesday. I might go on Friday and Thursday as well. But you won't get that opportunity if you don't take good care of yourself. And a couple of my clients who are a long way down the line with dieting phases, I've said, look, we could make a change now. Specifically, one of the ladies yesterday, I said, I could make a change now, but I know how much you're looking forward to getting back in the gym. So what I'm going to do is leave that change. I'm going to let the gym do what it's there to do. I know you're looking forward to it. And if I do take your calories down now, all I'm saying is I'm going to lower your level of recovery when you're going to need more. Mm-hmm. And to me, that makes no sense. So I would see this to a lot of people who don't have competitions in the lines, who maybe have photo shoots and stuff. I would say, obviously, do what you have to do. But to anyone else, I would almost use this next 2 weeks as not a maintenance period, but a period to get back into the swing of things. Because if you don't, the chances are going to be quite a bit of a bigger fight. And as you said earlier, Jack, you may end up then needing a deload week further down the line. When I say further down the line, I mean in 2 weeks' time as opposed to 6 weeks' time. And the thing as well is the emotional and psychological fatigue that this might end up having. So one, it's going to be a bit more stressful for people, as we've discussed. But two, the recovery demand put on you compared to what you've had at home with just bands and body weight is going to be huge. Some of you might feel like you need to sleep when you get home. And again, if we're not fueling that, as you said, with carbs, proteins, then we're only adding to the problem, not aiding it. And as we always know, if we can fuel performance, as you said, things are going to be more fun. We're going to recover better. We're going to get better sessions in, and we're going to enjoy it a little bit more as well.
Yeah, and don't go to all this effort to modify your training, follow everything that we spoke about earlier and adapt everything appropriately and take everything in just to then cap yourself at the knees with poor nutrition, because that is going to hold you back just as much as making any of those training mistakes will, potentially more. Even if you go in and do everything right in the gym, if you're then under eating and under recovering, then it was a futile pursuit really to make those changes.
It's like people say, which is more important, diet or nutrition? The truth is, if you look at the way I view this situation especially, is 50% has to come from each. And if you meet the bar 50% on training, but you only do 20% of your nutrition, you're only at 70%. If you meet the bar at 50% on nutrition and you only meet yourself at 10% on training, you're at 60%. So it needs to be an equal contribution from both sides, because if not, one's going to outweigh the other and you're going to end up with bigger problems than you've currently got.
Which I kind of hate that question as a starter. I think it's I just think it's almost like an incorrect logic to even start with. Like,
I saw your face when I said that.
I've never got it when people say it. You know, like it's the old bro science kind of saying was like 80% nutrition, 20% training, wasn't it? No, sorry.
Yeah.
Is that the right way around? Yeah, it is.
I've heard, different variations of it.
So people try and basically claim that that's why your nutrition's so important and stuff. But I mean, like with a lot of things that we talk about, I think they're actually just separate considerations, really. You can go up to 100% on training and you can go up to 100% on nutrition. And of course, they have impact over one another and they work together synergistically. But the idea that you can like half-ass your training because you're nailing your nutrition just doesn't make any sense to me. It never has.
Yeah. It's like I said, I think to you earlier in the week, you can get your training 100% right, and that would be great. But if you don't eat enough for the goal that you have, then your nutrition won't be right. So if you train to put on muscle, but you don't eat enough, you're not going to put on any muscle. Likewise, if you don't train at all and you go, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to diet to gain muscle. Well, that's great, but you can't stimulate a muscle with with nothing but a Snickers and a Cadbury's ice cream. You know, you have to give that thing a reason to grow. So you're right. You know, it has to be both pint glasses full here, rather than I'm just going to throw all my eggs in that basket and hope for the best with that one.
Yeah, I think it's maybe a bit like making money and saving money. Like you've got your income on one end of the spectrum and you've got your spending on another end of the spectrum, almost like training and nutrition. And if you are, it doesn't matter if you're making 50 grand a month, if you spend 49 and a half of it, like you're not going to be getting any of those positive results from you making that 50 grand. You're not going to be reaping any of the benefits of it if you're spending all of that. And that's kind of akin to like, even if you're absolutely nailing your training, if you're not taking care of any of the saving, i.e. the nutrition, then you're not going to be getting benefits from it.
I think that's a perfect point. I think that's a good place to finish there, don't you think?
Yeah. Enjoy it, guys. Have a good time, like Xander said.
We're going to be adding in a Q&A to the podcast in a few weeks' time. And to do that, we're going to need some questions from you guys. So do go over to our team Instagram page at JLX Coaching on Instagram, of course, and click the link in the bio and it will take you to a quick Google form where you can fill in any of the questions you've got, and we will get to those in the podcast to come. As for coaching, you can also check the link in our Instagram bio for that, or go to the website, which is at the moment jacklenton.com, and you will see the links to coaching there. Have a good day.